Hey everybody, we are live. It is 12 o'clock Central, 1 o'clock Eastern. It's Wednesday, and we're back off a hiatus, PA Live. I'm your host, Mac Antigua, and it's a full house. This is a first because not only we're going to have live guests, we got a live audience, not audience, but audience. So history, those of you who are watching home, this is history. This is fun. There's an energy, there's an electricity in the air. It's a 71-degree day in Milwaukee. There'll be a unicorn that comes across. This is how rare it is. So thanks for joining us today. Every week, just to re-summarize what we do, it's PALM Live, where we not only share with you what's happening in the network and what's some of the great stories, but we also catch up with an individual alum that's doing some awesome things, or in this case, alums. You'll get my drift in a second. So that's what we're going to do today from 12 to 12:30 Central. And you know that every Wednesday we put out the hashtag check-in, because those of you that did Public Allies know whenever you bring people together, you always want to check in a big old circle. So we have our big old virtual circle. And today's check-in question was, we're theming it off of I'm so blank that, because that's the hot thing everybody's talking about on the Facebook. I love that we have a live audience because you actually have people like laughing and stuff. Usually it's just me talking to the wind. It's I'm so public ally that. So my guest hopefully is going to be ready to have his save it. Be quiet. I don't want to give away who the guest is because I know everybody else is like, who's the guest this week? Well, besides the fact we advertise or whatever. So let me share with you some of my favorite ones. Frank Alvarez, Public Allies Los Angeles, says, I'm so Public Allies, I was on the 4th and 5th pages of Everyone Leads. Yeah, that's deep. That's deep. When you're actually in the Public Allies book, that's how Public Allies you are. Thanks, Frank, for hitting us there. We had another one, a couple more. Let's see, my man. Let's go to my man. Oh, D. Steezy. Let's go to D. Steezy. Daniel Johnson, also out in Los Angeles. He said, I'm so Public Allies, I put Compton on the map. You can see him rocking the Compton hat and the Public Allies advert. Thank you, DJ, for checking in, D. Steezy on Twitter, letting us know and represent Public Allies. Thanks for letting us know that. I got a couple more I want to put across the network. I'm so Public Allies that I got. Where's my man here? Don't you love how it's taking me forever to find stuff? It's the best. Margaret Yang or Zhang. Margaret Zhang. She's Connecticut alum. She goes, I impose check-in questions and closing circles whenever I run a meeting. That's how Public Allies she is. And if you were a longtime watcher of the show, you know that Margaret was featured. She's currently now the new executive director of a legal aid organization out in Philly. So way to bring that to the organization you're leading. I got one more. I'd be remiss if I didn't call out my man G-Dub, Garrett Williams, not only a Public Allies alum, but a staff alum. He says he's so Public Allies, he married a fellow Public Allies alum. That's Christina Duchelle Williams. Gary Williams, thanks for checking in from Maryland. And so play along with us on Twitter all day, hashtag PLN Live. Fill in the blank, I'm so Public Allies that, ... I put I'm so Public Allies that I still like to use the Lithos font. That's the old font that Public Allies use. And if you grew up in the 90s, it was probably the font that you saw at every coffee house across the country. So think of a coffee house menu in all caps, and that was the font Public Allies used. All right, so that was the Twitter check-in. Enough checking in. Let's actually go to our guest. I'm so excited to have one of my favorite Public Allies alum, because I first discovered this cat when he was an ally, and he had a blog, a thing called like Leadership and Learning. So it doesn't get more earnest. He's like blushing. He's like, you read that? I think I was one of the few that did read that. And it was like, who's this cat? He did City Year, ended up doing Public Allies in Milwaukee, and finished in 2012. And I'm so excited to have him here because he's going to talk about the work he's doing around continuing around leadership and building it. My man, Michael Grochowski. What's up, Mike?
Hey.
Do you love how chill he is? And I'm like, hey. He's like, hey, what's up? What's going on? Mike, thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome. So I gave you a little bit. Tell me a little origin story. Guardians of the Galaxy, Marvel superheroes. We all got an origin story. Before you did service, what got you into service? What led you into that?
So I started out with City Year Milwaukee. I guess I should look at the. Okay. Yeah. So I started out with City Year Milwaukee in 2010, finished in 2011, and then I was kind of looking at a next step, and I met someone from Public Allies at a career fair, and felt like I wanted to get into nonprofit work. I guess this isn't really that far back, but
all of 3 years.
Yeah, 3 years ago. But that's how I got into this AmeriCorps service. Before that, I was a barista for a few years, and I wanted to do something. I didn't know what to do, and I kind of stumbled upon City Year on Craigslist, actually. So it's not the most like romantic origin story.
A lot of romance is started on Craigslist, so I don't want to question romance in Craigslist. I think that's the fine tradition of romance. So you did City Year, and then after your City Year, you're like, I still love this service thing, or I like being in this community building vibe. Met up with Public Allies, and then where were you placed at Public Allies that year?
I was placed at Pan-African Community Association, so and I'm still there now, and that's where I work at the moment. It's a pretty unlikely match.
I mean, let's call it, name it. Yeah. When you say Pan-African Community Association, this is the first thing I think of. Like, this is the image. Obviously, when you think Pan-African Community, that's my man Mike, and that's my favorite. That's what I love about the story. Tell me about what that's like, because it's obvious that you're not the first image we think of. But tell me about what you've learned about that, or what you've discovered, about navigating community and culture and honoring that. Yeah,
so I actually, they're one of my top match selections when I interviewed because of the fit of the position, and so it kind of worked out that way, in that I fit in terms of the experience I had and what they were looking for. But yeah, since I've been there, I've just immersed myself, and I do my best to be respectful of the culture, and like I check in on everything. So let's say I want to have a party with the kids. Let's say like Halloween, like I would ask around and see like, is this appropriate? Is this not appropriate? Whenever we do anything, I do it with the youth input and with the parent input, which I would do no matter what, but it's especially important in this context. Where I'm learning a new culture. So yeah, I've just immersed myself. I get invited to like family gatherings, and like they'll like invite me over for dinner, and I just go and like try the meal, try the food, I listen to the same music. Like we watch soccer together during the World Cup, like, so they teach me all the things that they enjoy.
Right. And so, obviously we could put the label of Pan-African or Pan whatever, right? But what I'm hearing you is you are looking at this as, honoring a relationship. You're learning, you're being open. You're not assuming anything, and that seems to be, wherever you go, that seems to be good watchwords for like how to act, and so it's led you to be successful. I got a special guest coming up soon. He's gonna usually have Raul. Raul's not available today because apparently he's got better things to do than be on the show. Which, hashtag free Raul if you think that's a bad idea. We want to see if people really want Raul. But I do have. I'm smart because I got a sub. Not only do I have a sub, I have a super sub who's going to actually ask. Because usually we have a question, we have a stumper, or we have like a hard question, and so I've already brought in a specialist for that. So stay tuned for that. But I've got one more question, and I want to learn more about the team leadership work that you're doing. Your term is Director of Education and Programming. But what it sounds like to me is that your real focus is on the young people that are coming through PACA. Right. Yeah. And so tell me some of I've got some pictures queued up so we could speak a little bit about that, and I'll try to keep up with you. But I heard you got a few things that are going on and about to go on. Hit me with what you're excited about all those things, or things that it's an open-ended STEM. So you feel free to plug it, pitch it. What do you got?
So what's happening right now is the summer camp, which is called Camp PACA. We'll see a flyer at some point of the Camp PACA. And so the program, we started it 3 years ago to address the gap for refugee children in the city. There used to be a summer camp or a summer program led by MPS specifically for refugees, and after a while it was discontinued, and so we just felt that we wanted them to have the same opportunities as any other young person, and so I've been running it for 3 years now, and I bring in people I know from the community, and the students teach each other, and the teens are actually employed as the counselor. It's me and the teens, and actually, I don't know if I guess we'll get into it in a second, but the special guest has a relationship with the program too. So it's basically me and the teens running this program, and I plan it with the teens, and we do reading, enrichment activities, soccer, gardening with the kids, and And then, yeah, so the thing that's coming up this weekend is we're doing a youth farmers market, and that's going to be led by the youth. The youth and I built a garden last summer, a community garden, and we it's in our second year. It's really productive. So we're going to sell the produce and use the money towards something that the youth decide that they want to do, and they want to go on a field trip. So we're trying to decide what field trip that'll be at the moment. So it's kind of the thing at the moment is that, and yeah, there's the garden right there.
Right on.
And yeah, it's been a really awesome thing. The kids have weekly classes in the summer too with UW Extension, and we have partners from Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority who come in once a week and work with the garden too. And yeah, so we figured we would share the garden this year and then let the kids actually practice. The teens have been teaching the kids how to do customer service and stuff like that.
That's awesome.
So we did role playing yesterday where we had like a piece of basil on the table and a child like sitting at the table, and we'd come up to the table and say, "What's this? Like, why are you selling this? Why should I buy this?" You know, and the kids would like, "Oh, you use it in spaghetti. Like, we're gonna do a field trip," you know, that kind of thing. And then yeah, so the next big thing, though, the thing that I'm excited about is we're trying to use soccer as a tool for bringing more of the community together. That's something that the community already does. They already organize themselves within their different ethnic groups to play soccer. But we saw there was recently a Refugee Day soccer tournament, and we saw that the youth from different ethnic groups were really connecting in that space, and it was a place where like even across language barriers and like sometimes there can be some challenges like around communication and also you know, like yeah, so we saw that they were connecting around that, and that they were able to kind of like there were friendships being formed and connections being formed in that space. And yeah, so this picture showing up right now?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so this is our Pan-African team, which you can see includes more than only Africans. There's also Asian players too, and so we want it to be a Pan-African and Asian and even Latino team, and open to different people.
That's a very generous. That's Pangean. I think that's a Pangean team. You got the whole thing, but I get the spirit of it. You want to be inclusive, and that's awesome.
Yeah.
You know, your story about how the field of play becomes this other place where it goes beyond language reminds me of just. When I was in Chicago, one of the TSPs that I managed actually used soccer and service together, and it was in a neighborhood in Chicago where you had all sorts of different backgrounds, and again, all the kids were usually either immigrant or first generation, and we witnessed that too, right? Like the field of play was a space where they could come together and have a shared experience, and then use that as a launching point to move beyond the game. So it's cool to see that it continues to do that. What about was World Cup also accelerated?
And it helped with me too. Like I learned a lot because we would play the World Cup matches at our site, and especially the big ones. We'd play the African games and the U.S. games, and I'd watch my teens, and they just play soccer. So we're also the league game in this league called the Milwaukee Soccer Development Group. So we've also been attending those, and we're supporting that. We're trying to bring in more people to that and get some bring in different people we know to play also. So
great.
And the teams also have organized themselves. They're doing their own practices once a week, and then we do the games on Saturdays. So it's
so we got a garden, got a camp, farmers market, soccer, and all sorts of other stuff, right? Because during the year there's tutoring, and during the year there's it sounds like it's with young people, for young people. The products that you're creating, the young people are going to decide what they're going to do with that. So it's this real, again, it's really inclusive space. So it sounds like you're continuing to do. Now, how much of that is sort of like you've always known that this is part of your deal, or how much of that you think was accelerated by your service experiences in City Year and AmeriCorps, Public Allies? You know, could you attribute that, or like this is like family business? Like your parents are, you know, really deep into this work as well. I mean, can you speak a little bit about that?
Well, my mom's a teacher. She teaches in MPS, and I've always been taking care of my siblings, so I guess I have that experience. But I'd say Allies definitely pushed me toward like building within the community space. So like I think my AMSO Public Allies would have been that.
Oh, nice. That's a weave. I like that weave. He's a pro.
Yeah.
Mike's a pro. All right. We got Michael.
But that I do check-ins every day. Like that's how we do it. We do it. Everything's in a circle. We start with a check-in each day. Although I have a second. I'm so public guys in a second.
All right.
But yeah. So I learned from that how to do like community culture. Like in our class, I remember being asked, what do we expect from each other? Like what and being asked those kind of things. And then TSP, we planned it as a group. Like we basically did it all ourselves. We had a basic goal, but we figured it all out on our own. And so I want my teens to experience that too. And so when we're planning this year, especially, like in the past, I've been working towards this, but this year, like I have teens, like they're like planning classes for the kids. Like they plan like these social justice discussions we do, kind of in the spirit of public health. I asked them to bring up about doing a lesson on democracy, where we were going to come up with referenda and like vote on them. And I remember I brought up to the teens, like, it doesn't really work. And like, so they were critiquing me, like telling me what doesn't work.
How to make it work, or how.
Yeah. So like, wow, they've grown comfortable enough to do that, which is a good step.
Yeah. I think, And it sounds like it's a co-creative space, because you're like, hey, I got this thing, and they're like, or hey, and then you're like, okay, I'm going to take it back and work on it. We don't take commercial break, but we're gonna shift the hosting break, and I'm excited to have with me Nicole Acosta, who's a Public Allies alum from Milwaukee, and a special guest. She's also a booker. She booked Mike for us today. So Nicole, and she's our first audience member live host. So Nicole, she's got a question, because Raul usually offers up a question. Nicole, what do you got for Mike?
Okay. So I personally know Michael because he was my supervisor my first year working at Pan-African Community Association. And they do some really amazing work. Michael does some really great work there with the students. And I learned a lot from him, actually. So my question to you, Michael, is because I personally know that outside of PACA, some of a group that you belong to, and then you've attained a certification for nonprofit management leadership at UWM, correct? And then you belong to the River West Cooperative Alliance. So how do you see yourself tying those two into the work that you do with the kids at PACA?
Yeah, that's a good question. So like the one element, I don't know if I mentioned, of the farmers market is that it's meant to be cooperative in what we do with the profits. And so obviously there's a lot of things that make a business cooperative, but we're trying to use the spirit of that in planning that. So the kids are actually going to, as I mentioned, like they're deciding where the profit goes and what they use it for. I was showing them videos yesterday of like different opportunities. Like we looked at like Incrediroll and like Stonefire. I don't know, we were trying to find different like cool youth activities. And then we put on Action Territory. I remember yesterday, it was like, whoa, like, I don't know. So like they actually get to do that. Like they get to like check stuff out and decide what they're going to do with their money. So that's kind of where the spirit of the cooperative comes in. My goal is we also did a class on that last year, and we're also, the things came up with this topic. One of the is competition good. So we're going to tie that in with cooperation and that's a really deep question.
Right.
Is competition good? But yeah, so that's a really major thing. Then the nonprofit management leadership. I took classes in law, fundraising. I was able to gain some new skills that I could apply to PACA because like part of how I was able to stay with PACA after Public Allies is that I had to raise the money to stay, and I still have to do that. Like I don't. The program doesn't exist, and I don't exist there if I don't bring in the money each year. So it was a good way to kind of sharpen my skills. And so those two experiences, the Cooperative Alliance has a study group that we do twice a month, and it's community-led education space. So I'm able to practice a lot of things in that space too, and then bring it back to working with the youth. And yeah, so I'd say those are the ways. Yeah.
So I want to put you on the spot, Nicole. What you're saying is you worked for Michael when you were an ally. He was a supervisor. So I want to share share me a story of surprise or something that you learned working with Michael, or vice versa. You love how I put him on the spot. So what do you got around that? Because I think it's great. You got this cascading thing here. It's totally great. It's way better than I can come up with myself. You booked this, so. What do you got?
What I learned. So Michael has a very kind of like hands-off approach of supervising, so which I loved and hated at the same time because I was used to kind of structure a little bit, and he gave me tools, but he didn't tell me like how to do it. He was just, because I had to create a new site on the south side for our Southeast Asian refugee students, which is a whole nother story interview. Yeah. But so then I just basically modeled like what he was doing at our north side site with the students, and then I learned that the relationships that he built with the students was just as important for me to do on the other site. And then his work surrounding recruiting volunteers. So I learned a lot from that because recruiting volunteers is extremely hard to do when you've never done it before, and you're looking for avenues and ways to get these people to come in to do work with something that's extremely important in our community. So yeah.
Cool. Mike, what you got? What did you learn about managing?
Yeah. Well, if I could say, so I mean, I kind of jumped into so having another ally and me continuing, it made sense that the ally would work with me. But my philosophy is that we're working together more than I'm like the boss, you know. That also probably gets to more other philosophical things for me.
Of hierarchy, right? Or not into said chain of command.
Yeah, I mean, I can respect it, but at Paca, it tends to be that way in general. Like, and I think I flourish in that environment. And I think looking back, I would have maybe done more. Like Nicole was good enough, you know, like not like personally good, but like that she was feeling good, you know, about it. Right. And another dynamic is that like we're peers, you know, and Nicole has as much experience or more than I do doing community work, so it's kind of like not gonna boss her around. I'm not gonna do that, but I figure like I'm gonna defer to her. So I've thought myself as like the resource at the site, and then I would try to like advocate for whatever she needed, and then but without saying like you have to do it this way. Like there was the big goal, but it's kind of like this, you know, your approach, and I'll support it however you want me to support it. But I think I could have.
There's a term for what you're talking about, which is this flattening of things. And I think Zappos is actually doing this at a company-wide level, where they're no longer bosses at Zappos, but rather mutual circles trying to accomplish specific tasks. And people are designated to be sort of the point person to make sure tasks are achieved. And so I think what you're describing sounds like something that makes not only sense at a level, you know, in community development, but it's starting to take hold, I think, in corporate sensibilities of how do you get the most out of people. And that's what I'm hearing. That's how you'll operate it there. Is how do we do this, especially when the people you're working with have giftedness and talent, if not more, in certain settings. So what was one could say as very hands-off, you're like, hey, man, I'm just allowing, you know, how do we set up a way that I respect you and we can get that. So awesome. And quickly, what was your I'm so PA that?
I don't remember. Wait.
I didn't want to miss you out. Because you're here.
Did you do yours yet?
Well, I was gonna say mine is I'm so PA that Nicole's here.
Oh!
And that she got me to go.
That's true. Yeah. That's how deep it is. That's how deep it is. The line. What was yours? You don't remember.
Oh, it was I'm so PA. I have the ability to program without a budget.
I think that hits a chord. I think a lot of people watching home can resonate with that. Awesome. But that's great. You know, as we wrap up our interview, I would love to hear from both of you thinking about being alumni as public allies. What does that mean to be an alum? Like how and for me, I don't want alumni to be like a past tense term, but rather it's a present tense and future tense. Like, what does that mean for you to be engaged as public allies alumni? I would just love your thoughts on that, if you have any. And again, this could be like aspirational, or this could be, because there's a bunch of hopefully alum that are watching. You know, what resonates for you when you think about that?
So I don't know. I see the role of alumni as potentially around mentorship. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think it would be cool to see us build a program where, like, I could find a mentor and also could be a mentor. You know?
Yeah.
I'd love to find a mentor. I'd also love to be a mentor. You know, that kind of thing. And I think alumni. I don't know. I think when I think of being an alumni, I think of doing my best to keep in touch and maybe in the future, hopefully find a way to support current allies and keeping a connection. I'm not currently sure exactly how to do that yet, but I'd like to do that. And I think that I'm sure that's a challenge of being an alumni in general. It's like, who wants to be there and how do we engage them, you know?
Right on. What about you, Nicole?
A lot of what Michael said, and basically like taking your leadership role to the next level, I guess, and then keeping that connection with public allies and showing support. But you know, I agree with Michael as far as mentorship program, and it's something that we are definitely starting here in Milwaukee. With me.
Is that a nice segue? Was that a nice segue to talk about it? What is it? Tell me about this mentorship thing you guys are kicking off.
So we are hoping to start it with the next class here in Milwaukee. So I've been working hard at trying to recruit alum, which has become a challenge in itself too. So I'm always finding these little obstacles, but so yeah, I've gotten a good list going of alum that think it's a great idea, can devote at least an hour of time a month, and are willing to participate to be a mentor. And then we would like to offer different workshops and whatnot for alum as well. But it's all like in the works still. We're still, and my position currently is kind of unique because I'm the one putting it together right now, and my fellowship ends August 8th. So alum really have to learn how to organize themselves and to keep this going. Otherwise, we don't have a staff to keep it going, so it's up to alum, and I'm kind of in that unique position to like keep it moving forward.
Right, it's gonna be like one of those rocket ships, and then at some point the base kind of heads off, and hopefully the rocket keeps going and comes back home. That's exciting because there's not a lot of sites that have an intentional piece. What I'm hearing you talk about, Mike, is not only do you want to offer your space, but you also want to feed yourself, right, as you grow. And I think that's I think that's a great insight. I think that's definitely what our alum want. And so thanks, Nicole, for coming on. Again, return guest. That's exciting. Michael, thanks for being on with us. And man, look at this swivel. Look at this high-tech stuff we got on. And keep on doing the great work. Speaking of, we have to this point, we've just put out, check your emails if you're from the class of 2013. If you're from the class of 2013, that means you graduated last year. We just sent out a bunch of emails out to that class to fill out the year after survey. We want to know what's happening the year later. And so we've heard from 25% of you, which is super exciting, and we're continuing. We'd love to hear from at least 50% of you because that's going to inform us how we can be more effective and relevant to, or at least when I say us, what we can do at the national level, and then we try to share those results at the local level so that they understand how they can be effective to engage you. So if you're in the class of 2013, please fill out that survey, and if you're one of the 25% of folks that already did it, thank you for helping us know what's going on. As we wrap up, I actually want to wrap up on a solemn note and acknowledging, in our network, we have right now about 5,500 alumni, but unfortunately, since we last were on, we actually lost one of our alums, and so wanted to take a moment to acknowledge that alum who has just passed away. His name is Alberto Cazarez, and Alberto, we got him on the screen right there. He's a Public Allies alum from he was about to start his second year at Public Allies Los Angeles. He's from Culver City, grew up in Culver City, California. He died about 8 days ago in a car accident. It's a really tough time out in Los Angeles. We want to send our support and love for this. And just to give you, I didn't know Alberto personally. I've had the opportunity to learn more about him. They've actually created a group for him online just to talk about his memory and just to celebrate it. And they've also started a support around for sort of the funds to cover his funeral and to also support his daughter, who we just recently gained custody of. But one thing I want to acknowledge, and what was really impressive about his story, was that when he applied to Public Allies, he was actually a plaintiff in a class action suit against Los Angeles around the enforcement of gang injunctions. It turns out that he was actually served with a gang injunction, even though he wasn't part of a gang, and he while it didn't look like it from the outside, he was a person who has a 4.0 GPA, had a scholarship to a college, but unfortunately he was portrayed as such by the police and got served, and really hindered his ability to be mobile and to do what he wanted. And so he actually was part of, and he wrote about that in his Public Allies essay, is that what he's learned about himself and about the war on young people in Los Angeles and what can we do differently about it. It's unfortunate to hear about his passing, and it sounds like the incredible support that the community's had for his family shows that his legacy will continue to live on. And so thanks. It's not how we usually like to end, but we want to acknowledge. And if you want to, I'm going to show the page one more time. There is a GoFundMe page for him. There is a website to help support him, but thanks again to Alberto Cazarez for your service. Rest in power. Until then, this has been Public Allies Live. We'll catch you next week at this time. Guests to be announced. We'll see who Nicole books for us next week. But until then, thanks for hanging out with us, folks. This was live.
Love is where they speak it.